Good morning, everyone. My name is Ewa Kocińska-Lange. I'm very pleased to welcome you at our next edition of Brussels Talks. This time we will talk about cost, and we have the best speaker for that topic, of course, and that's Dr. Ronald de Bruyn, who is the director of the Cost Association. I'm very pleased to welcome you here, and thanks for joining our event. A few words about the office still for those ones who maybe joining Brussels Talks for the first time. We as National Center for Research and Development, the Polish funding research and innovation funding agency, are here in Brussels to support participation of Polish stakeholders, researchers, entrepreneurs in Horizon Europe, mostly in Horizon Europe program, but of course also in other initiatives that are operating in synergy with Horizon Europe as such. The ultimate goal is, of course, to raise the participation, the links between Polish researchers and entrepreneurs and those ones coming from other countries, European and also non-European. And one of the things that we are doing is indeed to inform about different possibilities that are existing for going international. And I think cost is one of the key tools to start also and to continue with networking and with establishing long-term contacts for many different initiatives and projects. And the title of today's event is "What's the benefit of cost?" So we would like to hear more about cost from you, and about a bit of a history as well, and some successes and plans. And of course, we got already quite some questions from you as participants, but you are also welcome to put them in the chat whenever you feel like. So please use the chat to connect with us. And after some introduction, then we will have a time to discuss on the basis of questions sent by you before the event, but also asked now. So let's use this 1 hour effectively to find out as much as possible about cost program. So I think without further ado, I will give the floor now to you, Ronald, to talk a bit about the cost and to set the scene. And yeah, then we will go into Q&As. So let's go for the slides. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Eva, for giving us the opportunity to shed some light on the cost program. It's a pleasure to be here at the NCBR office, and I would be delighted to explain a bit more about the ins and outs of cost. So in order to inject, let's say, the conversation with some info before going into Q&A, I would first like to outline a little bit what cost is about. And you already gave the key message, I have to say, because cost is a benefit, right? So, but cost is an acronym. It stands for European Cooperation in Science and Technology. And our mission is to provide networking opportunities to researchers and innovators and to tackle Europe's challenges in all fields of science. And we have for ourselves, let's say, defined strategic objectives for, let's say, the positioning and the implementation of the cost program. First and foremost, we promote and spread excellence. And I will explain a little bit more on exactly how we do this. Second, we also very much are in favor of fostering multidisciplinary research. And last but not least, we want to empower and also retain young researchers in Europe. In all, let's say, our ambition is to be the most empowering research program in Europe. But now I have to back that all up, of course, with explaining how we do this. And so for that, I would like to indeed go to a next slide that shows you the geographical footprint of our membership. COST was established in 1971. We celebrated our 50th anniversary not too long ago. And these 41 members obviously include more than the members of the European Union. And here you see a color-coded map. And the ones in green we call the so-called inclusiveness target countries. In the European Union speak, reference is always made to widening countries, but that's only in the EU. We have members, for example, like Ukraine and Georgia, Moldova, who are not member of the EU, but we refer to them in general terms as inclusiveness at target countries. And the other color code refers to the non-inclusiveness target countries. And there is a reason for this, because we feel that we need to integrate all parts of the European research community into the networks that are built in our program. And that goes very much hand in hand with the idea, we leave no one behind. So the membership includes these countries, also Israel and South Africa as members. But COST in principle is open to any other participant in the world, except nowadays, due to the geopolitical developments, the community from Russia and Belarus and the non-government controlled, let's say, areas in Ukraine. Now, some key figures. I already mentioned the COST program, and then indeed the core is about building networks. We have almost 300 networks that are running. Within these networks, all different kinds of activities are organized, but not research. So it is about the networking on top of the research that we facilitate, whereas all the researchers are coming together, of course, to talk about research and to advance, their endeavors. So one of the things to do that is by organizing conferences, but also training schools. You see here that there are a bit more than 200 of those training schools organized by the networks on an annual basis altogether. This networking also includes what we call short-term scientific missions. This is short-term mobility. So you see here a figure of more than 2,000 of those missions carried out in our community on an annual basis. And the community itself is a group of people of 45,000 active participants, let's say, in our programs. So that's really, the community that we are serving. Each network on average has a budget of a bit more than 150,000 euros. That seems quite modest, but again, this is not for the research itself. So it does not cover salary expenditures, for example. It covers the expenses of carrying out the networking activities on top. Our total budget for the period of the first 3 years of the Horizon Europe Framework Program, which is the source of funding for the COST program, is a bit more than 153 million euros. Now, a few words about Poland, and I'm not paying lip service here. It's really, very encouraging to see that there are Polish researchers participating in all these actions. So there's no action without a Polish, let's say, researcher. Now, participation is one thing, of course, but we also see that the Polish community is actively picking up responsibilities to play a leadership role in those COST actions. So I'm talking about a chair, a vice chair, working group leaders, a science communication coordinator, for example, or somebody who is administering the grants that are awarded within the networks. So all these kind of positions together from the Polish side, 61, it's quite a good number. And in total, to give you a view of the engagement, more than 1,000 researchers from your community are benefiting out of the 45,000. I think that's pretty good. Now, how does it work? And here is where the secret of COST is revealed, if I may put it in that way. like in any other, let's say, project in the Horizon Europe Framework Program, you have to submit a proposal. And that is done by a proposals group, and it starts, of course, with a good idea. And this group is then composed of a main proposer who is engaging also secondary proposers. We have as a general rule that there has to be a minimum of 7 countries out of the 41 of our membership that is represented in the proposal, out of which also a minimum of 50% comes from the inclusiveness target countries. So we build in the inclusiveness in submitting an excellent proposal from the beginning. This is in itself not very, let's say, novel. There's a consortium that makes a bid, and it's competition. And also in our case, there is competition. However, once we get to the stage where proposals are approved, and predominantly on the basis of excellence, we have a network of COST national coordinators in all the countries that are member of COST that nominate people to be part of the management committee. That makes it so inclusive because you can participate in a network without having been part of the proposal. Mm-hmm. It goes even a step further because people are not necessarily nominated by their country to be part of the management committee, can also participate as an ordinary participant in working groups, for example, activities, but they are not part of the management committee of such a network, which we call a COST action. And so in that sense, how it works, it's all geared to ensure inclusive excellence. The core of our business is indeed to foster networking between researchers. And here you see in the center of this, let's say, of this figure, the different networking tools that are available for any COST action. So I already mentioned short-term mobility. I already mentioned the training schools. They can organize conferences. Also the communication activities. On purpose, I do not say dissemination because it has a connotation of throwing the end result over the wall. It is really communication throughout the typically 4-year, let's say, journey that a network is embarking on. So from the beginning, it is built in. And last but not least, triggered by the pandemic, but this one was here to stay after successfully piloting it, virtual networking. So this is 100% virtual networking, not in part. So in that sense, we are quite innovative, and we could mainstream this under the Horizon Europe framework period. Around this core, we have some activities that add value to the networking activities of all these COST actions. So let me point out the COST Academy, open to COST participants, not to the wider public, but to the COST participants. You can enjoy all different kinds of networking, trainings that help you to boost the performance of your network. For example, we have science communication trainings. People can follow training on how to go about communicating scientific results, in the digital domain, or how do I tell good stories, just to give a few examples. We have groundholder trainings. We have trainings for young researchers who would like to take initiative and responsibility by taking up a leadership role in an action. How do you do this? We give training. So these are just a few examples out of many that are open to COST participants. It's completely free of charge. So just imagine you are not part of a proposal. You can get yourself involved in a COST action. And then it's also possible to enjoy training without any cost. So you see, cost is a benefit. I already mentioned that, right, Eva?
Yes.
Another added value service is the COST Innovators Grant. This is an add-on grant. Mm-hmm. So after the lifetime of 4 years of a COST action, those COST actions that feel that they have innovation potential are given the possibility to explore this further. So there's a 1-year add-on grant, with the final deliverable in the shape of a business plan. And yeah, business plan development is not necessarily something that is in the curriculum of researchers. So under the umbrella of the Cost Academy, we provide training on how to write a business plan, but also how to write a proposal, with hopefully enabling them to get funding, or maybe to take the next step in another funding scheme. For example, of the European Innovation Institute of Innovation and Technology, the EIT, with its own communities that is prone to innovation. And we have examples of that. Cost Connect, that is about grouping networks together in one event around a topic that is high on the EU policy-making agenda, for example, in digital or sustainable energy, or last year was the Year of Cultural Heritage, and also inviting stakeholders from other parts of Horizon Europe for them to network, let's say, with high quality in a focused way. The pool of 45,000 active researchers that are participating in COST are, of course, also in a position as a collective in each and every single niche, of course, that they are working in, to give advice that influences the policy making. So we leverage, let's say, the knowledge that is available within the community to policy advice, for example, in the field of COVID. The European Parliament has its own research service. We teamed up with them because we had a spontaneous initiative from the cost actions to come together to write a report on how to go about future pandemics. And it was not just about biochemistry. It had all different kinds of aspects that are included. For example, conspiracy theories. So there is the multidisciplinarity, let's say, within the group that is then leveraged as an input to the policy making. And in this case, it was a huge success. It was a nice event in European Parliament with MEPs. So this is an example of how we could do that. Now, roughly, you could say what comes out of cost in the whole community. The surveys that we carry out reveal that 95% of our community says that cost has helped or very much helped to boost people's careers, because you gain experience in the pan-European research game. What we also know by surveying actions that are ending, that there are a lot of proposals that are spinning off from these cost actions. These proposals are submitted elsewhere in the framework program. And we also ask how many proposals were actually successful. And we know that the success rate of the proposals that are spinning off from cost actions is a bit less than 40%. And the average success rate in Horizon 2020, we know, was a bit less than 12. So it triples your success factor if you are participating in cost. I would like to continue a little bit by giving a tangible example, because otherwise it remains a bit in the blue. Cost networks are built around many different topics, are often multidisciplinary. And one example, I think, is a real success story, is the contribution that one of the cost actions made to producing the first ever picture of a black hole. And maybe you've seen this not too long ago. So you see that success has many fathers. Also, the ERC said, yes, we had grantees working on this. In this case, the cost action that made a contribution was looking at the calculation methods to produce a picture like that. Because what you see here on the screen is not the picture that you see by looking through a telescope. We see a black hole. There are measurements taken. And based on the measurements, computations are made. And on the basis of computations, this picture can be constructed. And they made a key contribution to that. So it's part of the success. Indeed, follow-up funding in groups, but it can also very well be that there are individuals who submit a proposal elsewhere. For example, in the ERC, and you know that the ERC is considered to be a very prestigious organization. And if you get a grant from the ERC, then you have a brand of excellence, basically. And here we have somebody from the Polish community who was successful. But not only that, also recognizing that participating in cost was of tremendous help, because then you are meeting your peers, you get nurtured, inspired to submit the proposal elsewhere with success. And we have quite a few cases where people were able to get follow-up funding from the ERC. Now, just to conclude, how do you engage with cost? I already mentioned, of course, that one way of doing that is by submitting a proposal, either as a main proposer or as a secondary proposer. But even if you have not been part of that group, you can be nominated by your country to be part of the management committee, or out of your own initiative, you can contact the chair. If the chair looks at, let's say, the credibility of your offer to participate, and does it make sense? Is there a mutual benefit? Then you can join this cost action without having submitted the proposal. So then you are a participant. And last but not least, and this goes a bit in the sphere of the most unanswered question in cost, how do I write a successful proposal? Well, okay, cost, of course, also is open to receive proposal, but on a competitive basis, predominantly selecting proposals on the basis of excellence. But if you really want to know how to write a good proposal, come and join us as an evaluator and evaluate proposals so you have a feel of what a good proposal could look like. So these are the 3 entry points that I would like to highlight. And I think with that, Eva, I've given an introduction a little bit and trying to explain not only what we do, but also how we do it. I'm open to any questions from your community. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. That was indeed cost in a nutshell, and definitely we already saw some clear benefits of being a part of it. We have some questions already in the chat, and I hope that also some others will come. So again, please feel free to ask them. I would actually like to start with something that you also mentioned, and maybe it's not so obvious for everyone. So let's go to Q&A mode. And you mentioned that cost is funded from the widening program. But you talked also a lot about excellence. So this is a bit always a discussion that we are having about widening and excellence in Horizon Europe. Cost is a part of the widening program, actually, and funded by widening program from Horizon Europe, and still works a lot with excellence. So if you could more elaborate on that, how do you address this excellence in relation to also what you mentioned about the inclusiveness?
Well, first of all, that's an excellent question, if I may be so free. Indeed, what I outlined a moment ago is that a network starts with a good idea. And this good idea is then brought forward by somebody who wants to propose as a main proposer, and you have to organize a group that is composed a minimum of 7 countries, out of which at least 50%, so in the case of 7 proposals, it is 4, has to come from an inclusiveness target country. If you look at, let's say, the process that we have mapped out to evaluate proposals at cost, we take them in, we empty the bucket with proposals. Once a year, we have a so-called open call, so we empty the bucket once a year. And then we have a group of, or a whole, let's say, database, I would say, of individual experts who look at the excellence part of the proposal. Is it an excellent proposal? Does it have the networking, let's say, component in it? Is it prone to be part of the cost program as a single cost action? But in the end of the day, of course, you have a list of or a ranked list of all the proposals. Unfortunately, our resources are not unlimited, so we have to somehow cut off, given the budget that is at our disposal. Now, there is, let's say, a certain area, we call this a gray area, where you can debate, shall this proposal still be funded or not? So it's a bit of a band. And there we fine-tune a little bit. So those proposals that have the best networking, let's say, opportunities also for inclusiveness target countries get an edge, so to speak. We also, by the way, look at gender. That's very important. And young researchers. So it's not just geographical-wise. The inclusiveness also goes to young researchers and in terms of gender. What we have seen is that the cost actions are growing and are now gravitating around at least 30 countries per network. So that's even more than the European Union members. And if you look at the balance in terms of the money that we give to a network and how much is ending up, practically speaking, in the pockets of researchers of inclusiveness target countries, in the pockets, it's a bit more than 50%. So a bit more than 50% goes to the benefit of those researchers. Now, if you look there in the context of the entire, let's say, community in Europe, the research community is about 80% in the non-widening countries in terms of absolute numbers and 20% in the widening countries. So our program is geared towards excellence, but in an inclusive way, that we still ensure that 50% of the budget goes to 20% of the entire European community. And still, the participants from the non-widening countries are happy because they can network with everyone. It's a bit of a long answer, but I think that shows the finesse of the program and how it is designed.
A bit of a wider picture of the content, because indeed we, I think, agree in general when we discuss about widening countries' participation that the main challenge is to have a proper network of contacts within different countries to establish consortia for research projects in Horizon Europe and beyond. And COST is a perfect instrument for that, perfect program for that, to start with something a bit smaller, but indeed empowering a bit all the partners, because the feeling is that yes, I have contacts, I know how to write proposals because I used maybe some activities that you also talked about, some trainings and so on, and then it's easier a bit to go further. So yes, that's how it goes, and it should be understood like that as well. Okay, let's see some other questions. Some of them you already answered, but maybe let's stay for a while still a bit in this excellence and inclusiveness topic. But you addressed this question quite a lot recently, but I was thinking maybe on the second part of the question, how do you address the geographical balance as it comes to beyond European, really EU countries? Do you have some incentives also for countries coming out from a bit further than EU to COST actions?
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
We have 41 countries that are member of COST, and they are all represented into our governing, let's say, structure. But we have a policy of also taking on board what we call our near neighbor countries. Okay. So near neighbor countries, of course, is a ring of countries around the geographical footprint in Europe, of course. So typically this includes the Northern African, let's say, area. It includes the part of the Crescent, like in Jordan or Lebanon, for example. And until recently, it also included Russia, but it certainly includes also countries that are, let's say, not part of the European Union, but still considered by COST as a near neighbor country. And what is the benefit from a near neighbor country? Also, but researchers from those countries can participate in COST, but they cannot be part, let's say, of a management committee, but they can be injected in a proposals group, and they can equally receive funding for their participation. I had to go to Jordan the other day to promote the COST program, and I had to explain 5 times that this is for free. Right? So in that sense, we can be quite generous, but beyond this ring of near neighbor countries, we have to draw a line. As I mentioned, our means are not infinite. Nevertheless, participants from the United States or Australia or Japan can equally participate. COST is open to that, but they have to bear their own expenditures. And we do have quite a few people from other parts of the world that participate in COST.
Okay, that's an interesting tool then really to expand your network globally even, I would
Science
say.
has no borders.
Yes, that's true. Okay, and one more question that came to us related to the program part of you mentioned is inclusive the target countries, but this is going more into the leadership positions. Do you have any specific tools again for this kind of roles, because it might be a bit more challenging for researchers coming from those countries to immediately become a chair or proposer?
What we typically see in let's say a proposal that is converted into a network is that the main proposer typically, but not by definition, but typically becomes the chair. And in the group of main proposers or secondary proposers, maybe a vice chair is chosen, but they have to elect. Indeed, right? When they meet for the first time, when there are people also in the room that were never part of the proposal. These leadership roles are then decided. So we have other leadership roles I pointed out, working group leaders, for example, or science communication coordinator. We have one rule that every COST action has to have at least one of those leadership roles filled by a researcher from an inclusiveness target country, at least one. And apart from that, before new actions are kicked off, and last September until, let's say, November, we kicked off 70 new COST actions. Before the kickoff meetings, we have, in the beginning of September, a dedicated training for young researchers from inclusiveness target countries on leadership. As a matter of fact, I send a letter to the main proposers of the winning proposals. Can you recommend someone to participate? And it appears that more than 40% of the ones who are participating in those trainings also indeed get elected into in a leadership position. So it's not by coincidence that this happens. We actively set some rules or conditions, but we do not, and I think that is the golden rule, we do not interfere in the action itself. The actions are autonomous. We are the steward, I always say, but you are the captain.
Yeah, that's a very good approach. You mentioned a chair, a management committee, and I think that probably maybe not everybody is aware about the differences. So maybe let's again elaborate a bit more about the differences between chairing the COST action and being a management committee member.
Okay, so the chair indeed is the chair of the management committee. That is the construct. And then there is also a vice chair who stands in as a fallback, or sometimes they simply decide to divide portfolios of responsibility. That's up to them. But then, of course, the management committee decides, of course, on the further breakdown of the work, and the proposal already included a breakdown. But then the breakdown of the work then results into working groups. So they have to decide which working group needs to be led by whom, and so forth. So this is the way that the action actually manages its own activities.
Okay, I think it's clear now. Let's go now maybe to a bit of a different angle of COST activities. Interactions with stakeholders. Like COST is very well known, well-established program. And you already mentioned some initiatives that you try to influence also a bit of policy. So there's one question related to that. There's also actually another one, kind of a follow-up that we also got, where you're an inspiration for any national policymaker, or has any of your undertakings been translated into policy on national level?
I will start with the last question, because let's say when I started in the role of director, and it's almost 7 years ago, I found that cost was very well known, but within the community, and not so much visible in the first place, let alone known outside the community. Although the community is rather big, but still. So we have worked a lot on, let's say, our communication efforts to explain what the cost program is about. Info days, we went into the fields, also in areas where we did not yet have a lot of participants, for example, in the whole Balkan area. And I also personally engaged in traveling and talking to also, apart from with community members, to the policymakers, sometimes ministers, even to create awareness about the cost program. The whole, let's say, recalibration of the approach took place when we developed our cost strategic plan. That was back in 2017. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow, an update of this cost strategic plan is tabled in our governance. But I can already reveal that it is an update, but not a change of course. And so cost has its core activity, but on top, we have these added value activities that help us also to build bridges to other parts of the framework program. So we do not only want to provide networking within the cost actions, we want to provide networking by creating the bridges with other, let's say, initiatives in the European research area. For example, I mentioned the policy advice. We work together with the European Parliament Research Service, so we build a bridge via the science-informed policy advice, leveraging on our community, and to feed into that important stakeholder group, the MEPs. Same thing with the Joint Research Center. We have an MOU with the Research Center. Other example, we have the Cost Innovators Grant, which is a one-year add-on grant to hopefully go to the next step. We have an MOU with the EIT for that. And so people are going to apply to other funding opportunities with the ERC. So it's about building bridges. We organize Cost Connect events where we bring these stakeholders, together with our group of cost actions that are active in a particular field. So it's not about talking about stakeholders. It is about doing something together. It's in the action where the connections are built and sustained. Then you had the first question, and can you repeat it very quickly again? Because now...
Yes, that was the general interactions with stakeholders. How do you interact with stakeholders?
Okay. So actually I took this as the first question. Okay, contrary to what I indicated. But nevertheless, indeed, cost is a source of inspiration because what several countries have done, for example, Switzerland, but also the Czech Republic, and there are others, is by putting in place a national scheme complementary to the cost action. So the Swiss, for example, already for quite a while are organizing calls for cost participants that are affiliated to a Swiss institution to get complementary funding for activities that are not covered by cost. So cost only, let's say, funds the networking and not salaries and not infrastructure. And these calls typically do that. So it's a kind of an extra incentive for researchers to participate in the program, and they give them an extra push from the national side. Similarly, in the Czech Republic, I think that is the best possible example. They put money on it even.
Yeah. Okay, it's working quite well then. Okay.
Maybe something for Poland too to consider.
Maybe let's see. Okay, now let's move to some questions we also got now live. You mentioned the innovation a bit with cost, some additional grant that applicants or beneficiaries can get. But there's another question going directly into possibilities for startups, maybe. Are they somehow involved?
The cost program typically attracts participants to work together in, let's say, the grassroots type of exploration that is undertaken by researchers. It's not immediately about funding startups, let alone scale-ups. Nevertheless, what we see is that in some cost actions, there is innovation potential. But that has not resulted immediately into establishing a legal entity that can be considered as an SME and is then really a startup. It's actually the preparatory phase to that. And so we are building the bridge. And for the actual, let's say, startup, let's say, stimulation and also scale-ups, you have other instruments. So we build the bridge with the EIT, but the EIT brings them, further on track. And the EIC is about deep tech scale-ups in particular, and that's their, let's say, focus area. So we want to work together in a complementary way and try to create as many synergies as possible. And again, it's not in the lip service, it's in the action, it's in the doing, concretely.
Okay, so it's could be a starting point for some startup.
Exactly,
afterwards.
Because the end product of, let's say, our add-on grant period is to have a developed business plan.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be a basis for setting up the startup as well. Okay, there is another question now going more directly into the postdoctoral researchers. Do you think you are successful in including them in cost actions?
Well, cost actions are open to the research community at large, including postdoctoral researchers. So we have no, let's say, intention at all, on the contrary, to suppress, let's say, the participation or to promote. I mean, everybody who is a researcher, not only in the academic sphere, also in the private sector, in NGOs, they also conduct research. We would like to invite people to participate in COST.
Okay, there's an immediate follow-up question. Is that including British researchers as well? In the times of Brexit, there's always this question coming up.
We have to be very precise. Okay, so if we talk about participants, we do not talk about nationality. We talk about the institute of affiliation. So if you have, let's say, a researcher who is an Italian national and is affiliated to, let's say, Imperial or Oxford University, is considered British in that sense. Now, COST is in the fortunate position that in Horizon Europe, despite the absence of an association agreement, we can continue working with our British community as well as with the Swiss community, so business as usual. However, we have received very clear guidance from the Commission, given the developments since the 24th of February last year, that researchers who are affiliated with Russian institutions or Belarusian or to institutions in the non-government controlled areas in Ukraine can no longer participate. Let alone not all, and then of course also automatically not being eligible. This is frozen. So to be concrete, I mentioned, let's say, an Italian national who's affiliated to a university in Russia is not eligible. But a Russian national affiliated to the University, let's say, of Milan is indeed eligible to participate. So that's how it works. Because the overall rationale of the EU policy was very clear to us. There should be no benefit going to institutions. So that's why this is implemented, as I explained.
Okay, thanks for this. Now let's go more into practical things. So there is a question how to actually become a participant of the running cost action. Shall we contact the representatives that are on the national level, or how does it work? Yeah, it's good that this question comes up, because I did not actually put a lot of emphasis on the fact that you can join an action that is already running, rather than being there from the beginning, let's say. So this is possible until, let's say, a maximum of 1 year until the end, because then it doesn't make sense anymore. But indeed, you can join a running action, and the idea is then that you contact the action chair and basically come to a common understanding of the mutual benefit. Now,
if you are a researcher in the field and interested in participating in the COST program, you would like to know, of course, what are the actions that are active in my field, and where are they in their life cycle? Go to our COST website, cost.eu. We have the possibility to find COST actions, even based on keywords. For example, if you're in chemistry, you type in chemistry, and you get an overview of the COST actions. And with every action, you can read the memorandum of understanding. So this is basically the project proposal, so to speak. That's the common point of reference. And if this resonates with you, the contact details of the chair are indicated, and then you reach out and with your expression of interest.
Okay, so that seems pretty easy.
Very straightforward. Yeah, yes,
exactly. There's also one very practical question about trainings for proposals, for proposal writing. Do you do anything like that? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, I already mentioned, of course, the most frequently unanswered question is, how do I write a proposal? Now, COST, of course, has an open call for proposal, but it's based on competition. We want to have the excellent proposals in particular to fund. So we are not going to tell you how to write a good proposal. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, if you really want to know how to write a good proposal, sign up to our database or for individual experts. And then you can get a feel, if you're selected to evaluate proposals, of what a good proposal looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that. And then let's maybe go to a direct follow-up to this. It's just enough to sign to the database. So correct. How does it work?
Correct. You sign up at the database, go to the COST website. You can sign up in our database. Of course, you have to enter, let's say, your information. And what we typically do once we are emptying the bucket with proposals once a year, we look at the scientific disciplines that are represented in the proposals, because the proposals group has to mark, the scientific disciplines that are represented. And then we look at the profiles of the individual experts in our database, and we're trying to find the best possible match. Okay. Now, every proposal is evaluated initially by 3 independent experts. So that's how we go about it. So if you're in the database, it can be that you're called upon to indeed evaluate.
Okay. Thanks for that. And since we are talking about evaluation, COST is especially recently quite famous for having already a long history with blind evaluation. So if you could elaborate also on that, how does it work, and how do you see the benefit of that, maybe?
Now, COST highly values the principle of level playing field. And since we are providing, let's say, the framework conditions, let's say, for a COST action to operate, the tools are already known and so forth. We really want to make sure that the level playing field is maintained by asking the submitters to do this on an anonymous basis. So we do not say, like is done in other parts of the framework program, excellent proposal. What is the group that is going to do it? Is it credible or not? That is what we do not do. We have a double blind, in that sense, approach. The anonymity rule that we have set goes quite far. Because if the proposals group, without, let's say, revealing their own identity, is making a reference to projects that they are, let's say, involved in, just to inflate, let's say, the credibility of the group that is behind the proposal. And if via that reference, it can also be concluded who the party is who is doing that, you're also excluded. So it goes quite far. It's very well explained, let's say, in our call. Unfortunately, we still have, let's say, proposals groups who do not maintain this level of understanding, and therefore their proposal is not included. So that is very important. Now, so we really focus on getting the best proposals out there to fund, and then we help you build a network around it. So it's not an exclusive group that is going to do it. No, if you have an excellent proposal, then the entire community is mobilized. And that is why this double blind system is so useful.
Yeah, it's quite interesting indeed in terms of really focusing then on the content of the proposal and believing that proposers are able to deliver what they are promising.
Excellence first, and then we integrate everyone. So we are inclusive by this approach, and that is why I talk about inclusive excellence.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned already some success stories and some, I guess, results of your impact analysis, but there is also this question, and there's another one also coming to, as it comes to impact, and how do you track maybe some further steps of your beneficiaries, what they do after, and indeed how cost helped them. We saw some examples, but maybe you have some general overview of this.
I can give a very concrete example. It's a very recent study. It's not 100%, let's say, finished yet to be communicated, but I take the occasion here to integrate it in answering this question. And it goes for all cost actions, because I just mentioned that within a cost action, you meet your peers and you may get inspired to submit proposals. Elsewhere in the framework program, there's a tripling of the success factor compared to the normal, let's say, proposals that are submitted. Equally, you find peers who would like to be a co-author of a publication. And we know, and because we ask and we survey and we do impact studies, but we had an independent study carried out that revealed that if you join a cost action, your productivity in publishing co-authored articles or publications increases with 55%. And publication still is the main criterion to actually support your academic career. But it doesn't stop there. This effect actually continues after the lifetime of a cost action, so after these 4 years. Because you've built your network. You've built this network of co-authors. You get inspired. You go for a next publication. So it is sustainable. Now, the actions themselves work on many different topics. The results can come in many different shapes. I just gave the example of contribution to creating this image of a black hole. But sometimes it is about a new research program or infrastructure or let's say the boosting of people's careers. Let's say, look, I could show my experience at the European level, and that gave me just the competitive edge to become an associated professor. So these kind of examples you have. Now, taking that into account, we do also, all under the umbrella of the Cost Academy, organize training, or it's more a peer group, let's say, forum on how to make your cost action sustainable after these 4 years. So some of them establish an NGO, to build a community. So this is of course always the question. It is beyond our control, but we try to do everything to empower them to get the most out of their cost action, and that is the reason why I dare to say that COST is the most empowering research program. And we are not hands-off after you have received the grant, and then good luck, and we see you at the end with your final report. We really try to help you to get the most out of your action. And that is our stewardship philosophy. But they are the captain. We are the steward, they are the captain.
Yeah, but you're facilitating building community around, which helps then, of course, for some other initiatives as well. That's a very, very useful indeed. There's a question now coming related to the ERC, cooperation with ERC, and more specifically with the ERC Executive Agency. So do you envisage any formal cooperation with this agency to further strengthen scientific excellence across Europe, especially within widening countries, obviously?
Now, Brussels in that sense is a small place, so it's very easy to reach out. Indeed, we've had discussions also with the ERC, where we pointed out that there are quite a few cost participants that are successfully applying to ERC grants. At the same time, the ERC is, of course, very much, I think, a prime example of funding excellence. But the question is, of course, can they at the same time be inclusive? And in that sense, the conversation takes place what COST could possibly do, helping them to enter into geographical areas where the ERC grantees are a bit underrepresented, perhaps. This is a discussion we had it's quite a while ago, but still we have organized info days where we have invited not only representatives from the ERC, but also from the EIT, to present their initiatives and bring this to the attention of the community.
Okay. That's good to know. And we're actually coming to an end slowly. So to sum up, I think we can still probably go for 2 questions, a bit more like overlooking one, the key highlights that you would like to maybe underline now in the very long history of COST. What are the most successful achievements, let's say, of COST?
Well, it is very difficult to summarize, let's say, 50 years.
Yes, I know.
Also, COST is on a journey. It started, of course, with a smaller, let's say, number of countries. In 1971, a group of ambassadors actually were talking about the idea to cooperate. The framework program did not exist at that time. So that's the period in which COST was incubated. And when we celebrated our 50 years or anniversary, we also interviewed several people who played a key role in making COST where it is today. And if I may quote a former president, he said, well, if COST did not exist, it should be invented. And I think that says it all. And there have been so many milestones, there are so many tangible outcomes, but at the same time, I think COST is an invaluable part of the European research area. And we are happy to receive a bit more funding now, 15% more funding in this framework program. And we truly believe in the value of COST, and we are in that sense quite confident that also in the next framework program, COST will be given the opportunity to create value to the community.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And one last one maybe. So we would finish with some crucial piece of advice for participants and for potential new beneficiaries that you could give to them, how to start and how to become successful.
COST is all about active participation. So the more active you are, the more you get out. If you're passive, then maybe this is not something for you. That applies, of course, to an ordinary participant. It certainly applies to a proposer, and even as an evaluator. And it goes through life. If you are passively sitting there, if I may be a bit philosophical, the universe will leave an imprint on you. But what people want and what people are calling for is that you leave an imprint on the universe. So it's a matter of attitude.
Yeah. Okay, 1 hour passed. That was quite quick. Thanks a lot for joining us, for answering all those questions, and for being open to them. I hope it was also useful for our participants. Let's continue. I hope that you will indeed check COST website and get involved and look for some support. Also at the level of national coordinators, all the data are also on the COST website. We can also, of course, help you with that. And have a nice rest of the day, and see you next month at our next edition of Brussels Talks. Thank you very much.